stood out with his huge cloud of hair and permanent smile. And right then, he was flicking balls of paper at the group of girls at the back. Jordan Shire I did know, because at 6'4", he was one of the few that stood taller than me. And I watched him now, threatening to punch his best friend. I still hadn't forgiven Jordan for last week, when halfway through teaching fractions, he put on a perfect Dalek voice and imitated me, saying, "You will be mathinated," instantly creasing up the class. I threw him out, of course. But the thought of what he meant bothered me more and more. At night, in particular. I couldn't help wanting to know what he was insinuating. Was it that he found me out? Could he somehow tell I struggled with certain things? Determined to let it go, I unscrewed the lid from my water bottle and took a swig, scanning the room, looking elsewhere so I wouldn't have to deal with him. I hadn't been sleeping well, and I knew I wouldn't be fair on him. As it was, I had woken this morning with a head full of thunder and fresh concern that perhaps something was wrong with me. Something more than the recent bad dreams. My sleeplessness was now threatening my ability to train. Normally, a granite wall wouldn't stop me from a 15-mile run before work. Given I'd never seen a doctor in my life, except that spell in hospital prior to my discharge from the army, I wasn't sure what to do. The sleeplessness didn't shift with herbal remedies or any of the other advice I'd seen on the internet. I trudged to work this morning, and with each footstep, I thought, I'm a drum, over and over again. The thought didn't make sense, but I couldn't shake it. I didn't know what it meant. What was I supposed to feel? I felt nothing, and I couldn't stop the relentless beat of my life. Then a child at the back of my classroom caught my eye. Destiny Mills sat alone. Destiny. How I worried about her right from the very start. But then, worrying about her was better than thinking about me. In a year group where some of the boys were already bigger than me and some girls seemed like adults, there were just as many at 15 that still looked like young children. Destiny was one of the younger-looking ones. With wrists so thin a glare could snap them, she tamed dark curls into plaits and stood shorter than average. She had large, watchful eyes and a mouth that never smiled. She didn't have to speak, she wouldn't. Not to her peers or her teachers. She was rarely in school, and when she was, she sat alone at lunch, playing on her phone if she could get away with it, or reading obscure novels. Her small, silent demeanour could have meant that she slipped into the sea of unnoticeable kids. But she didn't, because she was exceptional. She was exceptional for 2 reasons. The first, because she was the smartest kid in school. She was in year 10, which meant that she'd be taking her exams in a year. When she joined the school 3 months ago, she'd achieved 9s in every subject assessment. Teachers would rather not predict, let alone award a 9, particularly a year early. But after her mock exams last month, when we'd all assessed her at the same grade, we quietly relaxed, glad to accept that perhaps Destiny Mills was simply a genius. Destiny was also notable because she was in care. Teachers have to know about vulnerable children, and as her form tutor, I had to know more than most. But unlike most kids in care, she wasn't tucked up with a foster family. Social services claimed that she was unplaceable. They said they'd moved her halfway down the country because they couldn't find another children's home that would take her. Apparently, not only did she constantly lie about being sexually abused in every home she'd been placed, but at the last one she'd set fire to her room. Arson meant she'd failed risk assessment after risk assessment. The school had never had an arsonist before, and we'd all had to be briefed. If George Danvers, the head, was right, if she failed her placement at either this school or at a new care home, then she'd be moved to a secure unit. She wouldn't get 9s there. If she didn't get great results, maybe she'd never climb out of the pit of her life. Since I'd retrained, I clung to the meaningfulness of education, the fact it could change someone's life. It wasn't the army.